welcome to Wrestling Royalty. I am, of course, Andy. I am joined by Sam from Gimme Ho Yeah, from WrestleSphere, from all those good places. Tonight we are going to be discussing Gunther and his reign, his record reign. As of today, he's set as the longest ever Intercontinental Champion inside WWE. We're going to be chatting all things Gunther, where he is in terms of like being the best ever Intercontinental Champion, where he is in terms of his status within the company. Is he the new final boss of WWE? And is just solidify his legacy as one of the best in terms of someone from Europe going across to the WWE. We will discuss that, and I'm sure a lot more, and we'll get into how Sam's doing right after this. As I said, thank you very much for joining us on Wrestling Royalty. We loved having you on these streams. We love having a bit of a chat about the big talking points of the week, or maybe a longer period as well. And this week, there doesn't seem to be anything else that we could talk about other than Gunther. But before we talk about the Ring General, we are going to find out how the heck Sam Smith is doing. How are you doing, man?
Hot is the only word I've got for you right now. I'm really hoping I don't wake my neighbours up because I am in the middle of nowhere, but I still have neighbours. But yeah, so my back door is open. It's only 25 to 10, so I'm hoping it won't be too bad. It's just so flipping hot in this room. And my wife has got the fan on in the bedroom. So what she doesn't know is the minute she's asleep, I'm going to go and nick it and bring it in here. But that's the plan. But we should have bought two. Don't know why I didn't do that. But did you like my little... That was me going before.
I thought it was. I didn't think it was you just pushing your breasts out. I thought it was a case of...
I'll do that too. I've been working out, so I might do that. But give everyone a treat. But yeah, no, I'm all right. I'm feeling good. I've had a good week at work. You know, everything's positive. You know, won't go into any more than that. But yeah, it's been a stressful and intense, but a positive week for me. I'm kind of now... When it comes to, like, obviously we'll get into Gunther in a minute. I'm kind of like, I feel like with WWE and AEW, we've hit a little bit of a lull. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
For me now, like, there's only kind of smaller pay-per-views coming up now. So I'm all about Impact's UK tour now. That's what I'm all about.
Oh, okay,
yeah. But that's the thing I'm most looking forward to in wrestling right now. But I think in terms of characters, dynamic characters, and like who's the most interesting person in wrestling at the moment, this week, obviously the last few weeks have been all about Bray Wyatt, of course, and Terry Funk, and somebody else for the wrong reasons. But I feel like this week it's all about the Big G. It's all about Gunther, the former Volta, and how we've gone from a guy who said, "Oh, being part of the SmackDown and Raw roster doesn't sound like something I want to do," to some guy who's just made for it. But yeah, over to you and your questions, Andy.
I mean, I don't even think it was a Raw or SmackDown thing. It was just a logistical thing of he didn't want and didn't like the thought of living in America. Things changed quite quickly, and if you're a wrestling fan, thank goodness they did, because I think they contributed to a hell of a run, even outside of his Intercontinental reign. You know, he was having matches before that were standout, and for anyone who was lucky or kind of switched on to NXT UK, there were some great matches on there, and even some great matches on NXT. So he is one of those guys who has kind of gone through the different layers and the different promotions of WWE, and he's all the better for it as well. You don't think?
Oh, sorry, mate. Say that again. Sorry, Ed.
I said, you know, he's gone through all these different layers of the promotions within WWE, and he's kind of come out of it. And do you think he's better for that, or do you think he was always destined for greatness?
Both, really, absolutely both. I was going to say that Progress Wrestling shared a picture the other day of him holding the United Kingdom Championship, the Progress Championship, and the Atlas Championship.
Yeah.
Now, they've demerged the Atlas and the Progress in recent times. But back then, he was the guy, I believe he was the guy who unified them the first time. But I remember watching Progress when Gunther became the champion, he took it off. I've forgotten who he took it off. He's not been in the industry for a few years, but he took it off that guy, and it was like his time, and he held all 3 belts. And what was lovely is that was a time with WWE UK in progress, were very, very closely linked. And I remember thinking, God, if we can and he cropped up on the main US NXT a few times, quite a lot. But I remember thinking to myself, my God, get this guy on the main roster, and watch him fly. Watch what this guy's going to do. But we'll get into what I'd like to see him do in a bit, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. We are going to kind of cover off, as I said at the top of the show, the big question for tonight is Gunther the best Intercontinental Champion ever? Because he certainly has held it the longest as of today. He's held it for 455 days, which does give him the longest title reign over the Honky Tonk Man, which seems to be absolutely ridiculous that in 2023 it was the Honky Tonk Man who has held it the longest, especially when you consider some of the names that have held the Intercontinental Championship as well. It almost became an in-joke that would never be beaten, that reign, just as a sort of inside joke. But anyway, we have beat it 455 days and counting, because he's going very strong at the moment. And we'll get into a little bit of where we think he might go from here. We'd love to hear from you. So as always, please in the comments, let us know. Do you think Gunther is the best IC champion of all time? As I said, he is the longest, but is he the best? That's what we're concentrating on tonight. What's been your favorite matches in his title reign? I've got a list of the title of the matches within his title reign, which makes for quite interesting reading, and I'll throw them up on the screen in a little bit as well. But let's start things off. Let's just put a lovely image up of, look at this. Look at that. He just looks like a champion, doesn't he?
Yeah, I love that image. I shared it earlier this week on Hull because it was just such a good image.
I mean, when you think of wrestlers, you think of big guys, and certainly he fits that description. And his transformation in terms of like body transformations, isn't something to be overlooked either. He was, for all intents and purposes, a bigger guy in terms of his weight. He kind of had this different aura to him, I guess. But he somehow managed to keep that, even as he's sort of trimmed down. He's very much a case of like, he's very muscular now. But he still maintains that aura almost. What have you thought about the kind of different like body shapes of Gunther, and do they kind of does it detract that he's now a smaller guy in terms of stature?
No, I think when he was on the Indies and when he was in NXT UK and things like that, the larger body type he had, the little bit more rotund body, I don't want to say anything disrespectful, worked for him. He was just this big hulking monster who would chop your soul out your body. But I think they've kind of refined his gimmick and refined his image on the main roster to a way where he is almost this militaristic, perfectly poised warrior. Don't get me wrong, he's a heel. And he has his, like, deep down, he's as a heel, he's a coward. And one day somebody will expose him as a coward, as all heels are. But he's also legit and incredibly powerful. And the tragedy of some heels is they don't know they can be legit and they can do it. It's only until they turn babyface do we discover that. But I think like he relies on his cronies because that's just what happens in wrestling. But his current body type works for him. He's worked really, really hard. And by the way, have you seen him dancing Bhangra at his wedding to Ginny?
Yeah,
it's a great video, and I absolutely loved it. But yeah, I think it works for him. I was a little bit worried at first when I saw him because I thought, God, Gunther looks a bit skinny. I don't know if he's the same beast he always was, but he's made it really, really work. He now looks lean, and he's still a giant. He's still huge compared to everybody else. So all the trimming of the fat and the building of the muscle just makes him look like a more dangerous animal. As it makes all of us look like when we lose a little bit of timber and put on a bit of muscle, we all look a little bit more legit. So yeah, I wasn't game for it at first because I've been watching Gunther as Walter for years now, a very long time. So it's why I'm so uncomfortable with his name change. It's WWE changes people's names all the time, and we all just smile and nod and go along with it. But that was one of the ones that stuck in my craw a bit. It still does. But yeah, I'm feeling everything about him in WWE at the moment. He look, in terms of an image point of view, which was the question. Yeah, I think he looks great.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of almost like you can segment his time now in WWE in terms of he was the way he was in NXT and NXT UK, and now he looks completely different in terms of body shape, but in terms of what has added to him, like it's added almost a bit of speed, and it's like
Yeah.
I know you're not a big football fan, but there's a lot of kind of like talk about Haaland who plays for Man City, and like he's basically like bred in a lab because he's a big guy. He's 6'4" or something, and he moves like he's 5'7". He's fast and he's strong and he can jump, and it just seemed to be like that's what Gunther's like now. It's like he's almost like he had that strength before. Now he's got a little bit quicker as well, which is even more dangerous. But he hasn't lost any of that strength, so it's amazing to kind of see that, and it just I think it kind of enhances his new role as to what he's kind of taken on. And you brought up a really interesting point there about being a heel, and kind of like you still have that cowardice that they play on sometimes. He's a very different kind of heel, because a lot of heels you're only champion because you cheat or whatever, but he gets clean wins more often than not. Sometimes you see if he doesn't feel like he's going to get a clean win, he'll just leave, and that's more kind of like cerebral side coming out, which is kind of cool. He's never really relied on retaining his title by using his cronies, so he can stand on his own 2 feet, which again, very strange for a heel. So it makes him a completely different animal and something that people aren't probably used to seeing. And it just makes him dominant as well. You have to be at the top of your game to beat Volta, Gunther. Even I said it there. The first slip. We should probably put a counter up or something as to how many times we refer to the wrong name. But let's throw up the next slide. I said that this is from TNT Sports, as you can see at the top, who in the UK show WWE. And basically, here is the list of the people that he's beaten during his title reign. During the 455 days he's held that title, a couple against Ricochet, Shinsuke Nakamura is in there, a couple against Sheamus. We'll talk about one of the Sheamus matches in particular because, to this day, it's probably one of his best in the company.
Yeah.
Rey Mysterio, another against Ricochet. He beat a giant in Braun Strowman, pulled an amazing match. He went on a bit of a streak, didn't he? Of like he could just pull a great match from anyone. And he managed 2 weeks in a row. He had Braun Strowman and Madcap Mouse, and they turned into good wrestling matches, which I don't think either of them have ever kind of had that leveled at them before. He beat Sheamus and Drew at WrestleMania. He's beat Xavier Woods, Mustafa Ali, Matt Riddle, Drew McIntyre. Again, that was another big event. He has got a loss in there, but as it says, that was by count out, so he retained the title anyway. The only kind of nefarious act that he's done to keep his title so far. And then we had on Monday night what can only be described as an absolute banger of a match against Chad Gable, with such an amazing last few 2-3 minutes. Great to see. If you haven't watched it and you get a chance to see it, go check it out on either YouTube or wherever you can kind of catch it, because the closing stage of that match are absolutely fantastic, as was the rest of the match, but it really kind of built into something. Looking at that list, is that a list of a record reigning champion, or is it slightly underwhelming in terms of who he's defended against?
Well, I think McIntyre and Sheamus, and I suppose Braun Strowman and Rey Mysterio are the 4 big hitters on there, because they're all former world champions in their own way. So, I've kind of enjoyed Gunther's title reign, but I think it's only reaching the point of being, oh wow, now like that match versus Sheamus at Clash at the Castle nearly exactly a year ago was not just where we thought, right, Sheamus has still got it in a big way, because we already knew that about McIntyre, but it's also where we saw Gunther as more, because before Gunther held this belt, in my opinion, since Miz held it to when Gunther held it, I can't really tell you. It flip-flopped, it hot potatoed around the company to different people who needed some small elevation at the time, be it Shinsuke, be it Balor, be it Rollins, be it Reigns. It went to somebody who needed a consolation prize. And I feel like under Gunther, it's not only is it elevating him, but he's elevating it. It now, I've always said when Triple H took over, I want the Intercontinental and the United States Championship to feel like a big deal. Now, the United States Championship did feel like a big deal after WrestleMania, but it's even though it's on Rey Mysterio, it's kind of sunk back into the obscurity somewhat. Where I think with Gunther, the fact that they're having a long title reign, he's beaten the record for the Honky Tonk Man. He looks like such a beast. I honestly think the IC is now the title to watch, and I wouldn't like if they had the IC title. They didn't have it on the card of Payback, did they? Am I right in thinking?
Yeah, they wait till Monday night instead.
Now, I think the only reason they did that is because if Gunther had been on the card defending, even against Gable, who's an upper mid-carder, it would have felt like a bigger deal than the Rollins and Shinsuke match. I honestly believe that. The Rollins and Shinsuke is arguably a bigger title. It's a world championship. But I think Gunther right now, as you say, and because he's a heel, he's got that final boss mentality. Now, I don't yet think he is the final boss, but he's easily the secondary boss in the company now. And while Roman Reigns is taking a little bit of a back seat, and before we get to Survivor Series, where they'll ramp him back up, Gunther is the man in between that, 100%.
Yeah, I certainly see when you look at that left-hand column of opponents that he beat, that was during a time where Roman Reigns wasn't very, he wasn't available, he wasn't on the show as much. So on SmackDown, the IC title became the title because the main kind of world title wasn't around. And they really, as you said, elevated it into a position where it was kind of like the title that you wanted to grab, and it would get you, very often they would maybe not even main event, but they'd certainly steal the show in terms of the matches that he had. And then the match against Sheamus at Clash brought the house down and was critically acclaimed. The match this year at Mania against Sheamus and Drew was very good. I don't think it ever quite lived up to that same shape, the heights it reached with Sheamus. But it was good. And then the match with Drew, we saw obviously Drew come back and Money in the Bank in London, and then they had the match like at the next pay-per-view, I think it was, wasn't it?
SummerSlam, yeah.
Yeah, so the other thing I would say about him is he does seem to be able to elevate whoever it is that he's against as well.
Yes.
No one ever comes out of a match with him looking worse. It's not often that he's had any kind of squash matches when he's been doing a title defense, which is great to see. But moving forward, as you've said there, you don't see him as the final boss. What does he have to do to get to that stage? Or is it a case of someone like Roman Reigns has to almost be dethroned and removed before he can claim that top villain or top boss, heel boss?
Well, for starters, it's the championship he holds. It's not on the same level as the one Roman Reigns holds. Although I do feel like it's got to a point where it's kind of neck and neck with Rollins, but that's just because of how he's been, how he's carrying himself and how he's holding it. But I think Reigns is the final boss right now, 100%. But when they need another big bad to be defeated, he's the second one. He's the one they can roll out to every other pay-per-view. I think they were scared of him overshadowing Rollins. And that says a lot. I can't prove that, but it's just my theory. Why he should have been on the card. He really should, not even in the main event. He should have been second from the main event. But I think for him to be the final boss, he needs to be in. He won't ever be holding the IC. But he needs to be in a story where he has an opponent that he can demolish. Like, I'm of the view that he should be the guy who either not necessarily retires Brock Lesnar, but I think him and Lesnar need to enter a bitter feud that culminates at WrestleMania, and he goes over Lesnar in a savage match. that would cement his star. That would really make him the guy to beat. And that would set him on his way to becoming the final boss. And I also think he needs to hold that title for a long time. Like, if Reigns loses that title at WrestleMania and the final boss is defeated by someone like Cody Rhodes and he retains at Mania, then he instantly becomes the final boss. Because let's imagine the baby faces are holding the other titles, the final boss needs to be a heel. So that's a great way of making him the final boss. The question is, who's he going up against at Mania? And if they did do the Brock Lesnar route, would that be enough? I think it would. I think that's where they should go. Personally, have a babyface Brock Lesnar, because I think Brock Lesnar did turn face after his match with Cody Rhodes by shaking his hand, putting his arm in the air, and silently revealing the reason why they were fighting in the first place.
Yeah,
I think Brock should take a rest, come back at Royal Rumble, enter the Royal Rumble, and get kicked out by Gunther. Start a feud towards Mania for the IC title. And what'd be great about that as well, this is a very important ingredient to this feud, is if Brock is going after the IC, then that'd be a great way of putting the IC on a pedestal, because Brock doesn't normally go after that belt. So if Brock was to go after that belt to take it from Gunther, that would instantly put both of them in the stratosphere. Because he's not going to go after, he's not going after Rollins. He can't go after Reigns. Because of a stipulation from the previous SummerSlam. Personally, I think it writes itself. That is what I really hope they do. I think it would be the best thing for all of them.
Yeah, and I guess what I'm about to say is probably going to risk the ire of certain members of the wrestling internet community. But Brock Lesnar versus Gunther is a night one headliner for me of WrestleMania. You'd have to really heat up some of the other titles if you wanted them to have a shout at, of being that headliner and kind of being able to carry that over Gunther versus Brock Lesnar, because that's a match people have been wanting to see for a long time. And I just don't see any of the women's titles at the moment having that kind of heat behind it. I don't see Seth or anyone who holds that belt being able to build something as much as highly anticipated as that match would be at WrestleMania. And I think that's the only way I want to see that match is at WrestleMania as well.
Yeah, me too.
You either open with it or you close the first night with it, because we know Roman's going to close the weekend, so that's fine. As it is right to do, because as much as 455 days is a long time, Roman Reigns' reign is way over double that.
Double it. Yeah, it's
So we live in an age at the moment where they're building up some prestige behind a lot of the belts, which is great to see.
Yes, and that's so good. My only concern, I don't know if you agree, is the kind of what they're doing with Gunther and Roman is kind of the same thing. Both of them have been so legendary in their reigns that it's almost rude to take the belts off them anywhere other than WrestleMania. But the problem is they can't do that to both of them at WrestleMania. Well, they can. Of course they can. But it would feel a little bit...
Yeah, we saw something similar at WrestleMania 35, if you remember. There was a lot of people, including myself, who went in going, I could see two of the three big baby faces winning, but I can't see all three. And it ended up being that all three. So Seth won, Becky won, and Kofi won. And I didn't think going into that all three of them would walk out with the title, because it just felt a bit too, the good guy wins. Whereas here it would have to be a case of we've toppled two of the biggest names, and as you say, it feels a little bit of a stretch too far that they would dethrone both within 2 days of each other.
But I think if he went up against Lesnar and he beat Lesnar, then that'd be a great way of going, wow, holy yes, he beat Lesnar. But then at the same time, what they could do is then maybe take it off him at SummerSlam, keep that feud going to SummerSlam and have him lose it there. Because I love the idea of Brock holding the IC. Because him not just going after it, but him holding it will really put the IC on the map. So that is what I do
as well.
Yeah, I'd have Roman lose to Cody at Mania, send us all home happy, where we all went home and cried into our beer at the hotel last time, a few months ago. You should have seen us. But yeah, I'd have him. I'd have Gunther retain, look dominant, stand over the crumpled corpse of Brock Lesnar, but Brock then maybe be the guy to take him down at SummerSlam, and maybe then turn Gunther face and have him feud with somebody like some big heel and do it that way. It's of utmost importance that they protect Gunther now and help guide him into a top spot, but without punking out the IC title.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to say, in terms of images, this image from WrestleMania, like how much of a big deal does he look here? It's like, and also, quite frankly, I thought they did a fantastic job this year with the staging. Like, it looks very classy and it looked like a big event, which is great. I don't mind the strip back. Let's just have a walkway through the crowd to get more people in. That's fine, but not a WrestleMania. And I'm really glad that they did something as big as this. And it was in LA, so it was a fantastic way to do it in a sort of like cinema front. So well done to them. And yes, for me, this is just that image, and you can see the guys from Imperium in the background as well, and it just looks like they're waiting in the wings if he was needed. But the ring general doesn't need anyone at the moment. He gets business done himself.
Do you want to know something funny? Sorry, dude. Do you want to know something funny? Jess and I have been doing impressions of Ludwig Kaiser, and we've got it down. Well, maybe I'll do it later. But sorry, you were saying.
I was going to say you can't say that and then not do it, but so you got to go for it now.
Okay, hang on. I'm going to do this live on stream. Ladies and gentlemen, I demand all of your gratitude. I haven't practiced the next bit. That's where I'm up to. But there you go.
You went a bit Godfather there at one stage, but it's very
good. But he does sound like, I actually thought that the other night. I've woken up all my neighbours. I'm going to be in shit trouble. But yeah, he actually does have an air of Brando about him. I've honestly thought that every single time he's come out, but maybe I am. Because I do the Godfather impressions as well. You come to WrestleMania and you ask me to do murder. This I cannot do. But yeah, I do Marlon as well. But there you go.
Very good. I do appreciate that. Let's talk about the match on Monday. I don't know if you've had a chance to see it or at least see the highlights.
I've seen it.
What were your thoughts on the match? And I'm interested to find out as well, what were your thoughts about Chad Gable in the match?
I think it was a great match as far as a TV match. I'm kind of astounded they gave it away for free, but it was quite a short match, which is fine. That's okay, but it did feel like a very good Raw match rather than something like a banger we'd see at a pay-per-view. I felt both of them were phoning it in a little bit. It was very, very good, but there was just something missing from it. And all I can maybe it was because there was an ad break. I don't know. Or there was a couple of ad breaks. It might be that. I think that might be the thing that is holding it back from true greatness for me. But I'd love to see it again on a pay-per-view. I kind of think it should have been on the pay-per-view. I think I've said it twice before, but I think their insecurity held them back from doing that. But I don't know. Like, Gable looks great now. He looks fantastic. He's now fully a baby face. He's legit a wrestling, classic wrestling, catch kiss, catch can, Olympic style superstar. But I don't think he's the one. I think this was necessary. I think he's been elevated by this feud. Maybe the feud's over. Maybe it's not. But I do feel like he needs to be a stain on Gunther's boot going forward to something bigger. But he's still done well out of it. No one can throw any shade at him. I think now what needs to happen is a heel needs to come along and go, Chad, Shorty G can never get it done on the big stage, and then he goes and has to kick the crap out of that heel. That's what I think Gable needs to go and do now. Gunther needs to start flirting with bigger stars. Is McIntyre done with him? Is Riddle done with him? I don't know. We'll see. Sheamus. I think they're the three that he needs to like. I feel like they're his rogues gallery. They're the three he needs to definitively beat. And I'd kind of like to see one day Sheamus get a legit win on him without Drew being involved, like the whole Clash at the Castle thing. I'd love
Yeah.
for them to one day do Clash at the Castle again and it can give us a do-over where Sheamus goes over. I think that would be magical booking. And I'm of the view they'll do Clash at the Castle again.
Okay, interesting shout. What I will ask you then is, you have a quite a large body of work to pick from. What are you putting down as Gunther's best match, or Walter? You go as far back as NXT UK if you like, but name that one definitive match so far in his career with WWE.
It's got to be Clash for me. I know Sheamus was the MVP, and he's the one who got the standing, like, because he came out as a heel and walked back in as a babyface. They did a turn with Sheamus, and I'm not so sure they realised it was going to be quite what it was. I don't know how much of that was organic with the crowd, and how much of that was pre-planned by WWE at Clash. I still to this day I wonder about that. And you were in the building too, weren't you? So, and I don't know if you feel the same way. But while Sheamus was the MVP in that match, it takes two to tango. So that is if I wanted to show somebody a wicked Gunther match, that's the one I'd show them. And I have as well, actually. I've done that exact thing. So it has to be that one for me. Maybe it's because I was in the building and I was so caught up in it. And like I said, Sheamus was the MVP, but the more time has gone on, I feel like that was the turning point. That was where we thought, my God, Gunther is a star. This guy is an absolute star.
I mean, I'm going to respectfully disagree. I very much enjoyed that match inside Cardiff at the Millennium Stadium, or Principality Stadium as it's called now. I would go for, well, I think at the time he was known as Walter versus Ilya Dragunov for the NXT. Both matches were great, but there's something very special about the one inside the BT studios where it was empty. I watched that match, and I think I got halfway through watching it and was just like, what is going to happen in this match? Because they are absolutely destroying each other. Like, Dragunov sells so beautifully in terms of like how he holds his neck, or that he could barely stand up. And he just seems to be like the perfect opponent, the perfect person to pair Gunther with. And that moment in that match where they are screaming in German at each other, and I've been lucky enough to speak to both men in interviews, and I asked them what they said, and neither of them could remember exactly. They said they think it was along the lines of give up, and it was screamed back that you're going to have to kill me out, and I will kill you. So just hearing that in German though, and just thinking like how visceral it was, and the how, you know, how his chest had welted up. Both men had kind of welted up, and I just got goosebumps watching that match. And to me, I think it hasn't been surpassed so far. It was just an air about it. And then their return match at NXT inside the Performance Center was just about as good. I think maybe not having fans in just gave it this weird kind of like creepy air, which just added to it somehow as well. So yeah, I really enjoyed both of those matches. And personally, I think when the time comes and Dragunov comes up, they should build him as almost like the hurdle he can never quite get over. And he's almost like the kryptonite that he just, you know, that it's always there, and he's just like a sort of like something that he just can't surpass. I'd love to see it. I know he does have a victory over him, but since then, Dragunov's had 2 victories over him. So personally, I would keep going with it. I'd love to see that be the way it's introduced, when, you know, at some point Gunther could be stood in the ring saying like, no one's beat me. You know, I've been going all these like days, and there's not a single person who can actually beat me via pinfall or submission. And then out comes Dragunov, and let the rest kind of just take care of itself. But yeah, for me, it's Dragunov versus Gunther in the BT studios.
Yeah, no, I get you. So go on, carry on, mate. Sorry, I
just what did you think of that match, or that series of matches, that kind of storyline?
Yeah, well, this is interesting because it's a few people might not know this, but that story was even longer in the telling than people know, because Gunther and Ilya Dragunov, or Volta, have feuded across WXW, across Progress, and I don't know if they tangled in Evolve. I don't know if Ilya ever ended up in Evolve, and certainly Volta did. But that, like, their rivalry goes back years, and I think a lot of it happened in WXW, and some of it then spilled out into Progress as well. But WXW and Progress share a continuity, and often did talent sharing, especially with both of them being WWE UK satellites for quite a long time as well. So those matches were the culmination of a very long rivalry that includes Ring Camp, which was basically is what Imperium is kind of, evolved from.
They had Thatcher in that as well, didn't they?
Yes, they did indeed. Briefly, I think Ludwig Kaiser, Timothy Thatcher, Gunther, Alexander Wolf. He was called. Was he? Oh, is that what he's? Axel Titcher on the Indies. A bunch of them were involved in that stable. I don't know if Dragunov was ever part of it, or if he was someone who would mess with them that they needed to go after. But if they were the NWO, Dragunov was Sting. If that makes sense in that story. So it was very satisfying for someone like me who's watched that for years to then see it play out in WWE. And WWE have made a beeline for it as well, because they knew it was money. And maybe you're right. Maybe the pandemic, because a lot of the pandemic era I've kind of cast out of my mind, almost deliberately. And the problem with that is there are some bangers that I've kind of deleted that I shouldn't have.
NXT UK would just deliver pretty much show after show.
Yeah.
It wasn't just those two guys.
I've said it before. I've said the best wrestling, in my opinion, during the pandemic era was WWE UK and the Heritage Cup stuff, and Ring of Honor's pure championship tournaments and pure matches, because they were just delivering so much in-ring psychology. Well, don't get me wrong, I enjoyed everything else. Like the Thunderdome was a thing. And I never want to see Daly's place as long as I live ever again. But yeah, there was something that those things had. They had the ring psychology, while WWE was doing The Fiend, who obviously Bray Wyatt and The Fiend I adored. But while they were doing what were they flipping called Retribution in the Thunderdome era, and NXT UK, and Ring of Honor. And even Impact as well were focusing on went back to basics, and almost did studio wrestling again. So yeah, there was a lot to love there. But yeah, and I see. For me, it's still all about Gunther, maybe because I was there in person and I got so bloody into it. But yeah, I can see why you picked them. I think, for example, Adam Cole versus MJF at Wembley. I was so into that at the time, and Dom was laughing his head off because I was jumping up and down like a kid because I was so into that match, and like Roman Reigns versus McIntyre as well, and Roman Reigns versus Cody. But then when I go back and I've watched those matches since, they've not done it for me in the same way. So I don't know if they benefited from being there live more, but the matches you've picked, the Dragunov versus Volta, they can't do that because there was nobody there apart from the flipping ring crew and the commentators. So they had to stand on their own merit, and I'm sure they did. So I'm certainly not. I'm sticking with my pick, but I'm certainly not going to disparage yours in any way.
Hey, that's the beauty of having these discussions, is that we don't have to agree, but also certainly there's a lot to appreciate about pretty much any of the matches. But certainly that series, all the one against Sheamus at Clash, is fantastic as well. Definitely worth if you've got the network or Peacock, go back and watch those matches. Go back and watch a lot of NXT UK because there's some great stuff on there. And people have often accused, as you said, like during that time, it was a bit silly sometimes in WWE, and they leaned heavily on the cinematic matches at times. Whereas NXT UK seemed to be almost like the antidote, and it was the antithesis of that. And it was very much, we're going to base ours in a lot of reality and a lot of technical wrestling. And it was fantastic for it as well. But rest in peace to NXT UK. Unfortunately, we don't know what's going on with NXT Europe yet. So
it's not dead. It's just NXT UK is not dead, folks. It's just resting. It just needs to get out off the shelf, and it makes total sense to replace NXT UK with NXT Europe. It makes total sense to me, as a massive anti-Brexiter. But because it means more people can collaborate and get to where they need to get. It'll be a much better filtration system. But yeah, I miss NXT UK, but I'm not giving up on the dream of NXT EU. I think it needs to happen. I think Triple H has plans. They are very long-term plans. Like I look forward to the day. I hope he brings back. The pandemic slowed everything down, but I love the idea of having NXT Japan, NXT Mexico, and NXT EU. I think they are the three we really need next to NXT US. And my God, will be in developmental heaven.
So we're going to wrap things up with asking the question that is at the very title of this video, and probably the biggest question we'll ask tonight. As we said, today Gunther managed 455 days with the Intercontinental Championship. So he's the longest reigning Intercontinental Champion. But is he the best Intercontinental Champion? We've had a comment through from Tom Talks Rubbish. Always good to see you, buddy. Hope you're having a great night. He says yes, but Savage is a close second. So one name already thrown out there, by Tom. Sam, is he the best IC champion? If not, who else, or who deserves a bit of an honourable mention if he is?
Do you know what? I haven't cared about the IC championship. I've wanted to care about it. I've desperately wanted to, but it's not my fault that I haven't cared. It's been WWE's fault for not booking it right, using it as a consolation bauble just to get a little bit of spotlight on somebody. But it's always been so cynical, It's always just been so transparent and false. And they decide to give somebody a push, and they stick that on somebody, but it's never really done the job. But it did with The Miz. The Miz, and I'm going to quote The Miz, "I made this title relevant." Yeah, Miz, you kind of did. And it made you as well. Like, The Miz wouldn't be the fashionable heel the guy who came out of the suits and the shades with that white strap around his neck. Like, that is an image that will live in WWE forever. And like, that is what made Miz, in my opinion, and made him a household name and made him a valued property. Because, like, no one ever cared about him shouting "Oorah." I didn't even care about his title reign and beating Cena at Mania or any of that. Miz, to me, was the guy who kept the IC title in the sun, kept it relevant, if you like. However, he isn't a fighter. He was a heel, a chicken poo heel, who was holding that to generate heat, and he existed to put over a babyface. But the experiment didn't work because he remained much more successful than any babyface who ever beat him for it. I'm thinking Rollins, Reigns, Dean Ambrose. So, to answer your question, long story short, the person who has done that is Gunther. Nobody since Miz has done it. And yeah, you can go back to Jericho and you can go back to all of those guys, but things move on. And I don't even remember any of their reigns quite as fondly as I'm enjoying this one. And I think the best is yet to come. So I'm going to give it a very bold yes. I do believe Gunther, at least in modern memory, Gunther is indeed the best Intercontinental Champion. And I can't think of anyone like, yeah, there's Jericho, yeah, there's Savage, yeah, there's Miz. But I didn't enjoy their reigns quite as much or really notice it quite as much as this. Gunther and this title are a match made in heaven, and I think it's been clever booking, great working, and I hope they do the same with the United States Championship soon. But I'm going with yes, he is.
Cool. I mean, there might be some recency bias in there, I guess, because it's also
Perhaps.
When it's been 455 days, it's very difficult to straight away. You have to cast your mind back over a year just to get to before before Gunther, and
which is why I qualified it with that thing, all that stuff about the Miz at first.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like the Miz is a great shout because in terms of like how many reigns he's had, simply out of sheer number, we've got to mention the Miz. Some names I would throw out there: Chris Jericho, absolutely. I think Chris Jericho's IC run was fantastic, and I even enjoyed stuff where he had the shared IC title reign with China as well. That was good fun for a little while. I know some people weren't a fan, but be that as it may. Even to like some of the matches, I mean, one of my all-time favorite matches where I was so into it because I was a bit younger was when Triple H was IC champion. He had a match against Jeff Hardy, and because I was such a big Jeff Hardy fan, I remember just going like, "Oh my god!" It was on SmackDown as well, and I just thought, "Oh, maybe." And they got Jeff within a whisker of doing it. And I think it's even one of those ones where Triple H kind of maybe even shook his hand or stood him up afterwards. And was it an IC match against Taker in the ladder match? Or was that a world title match? I can't remember.
Oh, I don't know, mate. I watch so much flipping wrestling.
if that's the IC title, that's a fantastic match as well. And like seeing Taker put over Jeff Hardy after a ladder match of all things, that was fantastic.
I remember it was such a good match, but I couldn't tell you if it was for the belt or not. Somebody in the comments tell us because he and I are both tired, and we have to watch a hell of a lot of wrestling. Take pity on us because of how much we have to flipping watch to do what we do. But anyway,
yeah, I'm trying to remember. I feel like maybe it was actually for like the World Championship.
Are you Googling it? I can see you like looking down at your phone.
Yeah. Oh yeah, so actually it was for the belt. You probably find it more synonymous with Brock when he was undisputed champion. It's that belt that was up for it. But yeah, I mean the other thing is that we have gone through spells with the IC title where it was the likes of Val Venus and Dean Malenko and people who you would never really associate with the main event. But it was always entertaining. There's something about the IC title. It's often been called the workhorse title, and certainly the workhorse title fits Gunther's character very well. But I would like to see there be like maybe a couple more higher tier people, let's say like higher tier superstars go for it to really solidify this reign. Because looking at that list, I don't think that's a list that when you go back in, say, like 10 years' time, and you say, like, name 5 of the people that he had matches with, I think maybe outside of Sheamus and Drew McIntyre, in 5 years' time, you might be struggling a little bit, certainly after that.
I think I might be now. I think I might be right now. To be fair. I could do it. If you gave me enough time, I could do it. But obviously, I'm going to go to those two, and then I'm going to say Gable because I only watched it tonight. And then I'm going to go, and I'm going to have to think about it.
Yeah.
But at least I can get to 3, which is probably more than I can get to with anybody else.
Yeah, it's difficult because you could say like I could mention Kurt Angle, and then but that's at the same time as like there were the times where he's having matches with someone that we won't mention, and then there'll be Chris Jericho will be in there as well. He even had matches against like people like China, so it's easy because they're all kind of intertwined. I would maybe like to see a multi-man match as well, because it'd be interesting to see how he would kind of deal with that like dynamic of a match, throwing a couple of like different ones where it takes him out of what we would perceive to be his comfort zone, because he can deliver banging one-on-one matches and he's had one triple threat match. But let's see him in a multi-man match, like 4 people or a scramble or something along those lines where it just is a little bit different. And I think that's what will push him into 100% being named as the best ever IC champion. But certainly it's very difficult to argue against it, even though you've got the likes of Bret, you've got the likes of, as Tom said, Randy Savage, you've got the likes of, did Piper have the IC belt?
I think
I know he never had the main championship, but I don't know if he ever had the IC.
I get fuzzy with some of the older stuff.
Even like I say, Stone Cold, The Rock, Triple H, you've all held it. So it does feel like it's back on the move towards being a prestigious belt. But we're gonna wrap things up. as we've kind of like gone through a few of the questions. As always, I really appreciate anyone who's joined us tonight, or if you're watching this in the future, I hope you've enjoyed it as well. We have, of course, been talking about Gunther. Let us know in the comments, what's your favourite Gunther match? And of course, the big question that we've asked tonight, is Gunther the best Intercontinental Champion ever after he broke the record for 455 days? Sam certainly thinks so. Tom in the comments has also said so as well. I would tend to agree. I'd say he's definitely up there if he's not already there, but he's starting to pull away into that rarefied air of being at least in the conversation, if not already, yes.
I'm putting Miz in second place, though. I am, which is going to absolutely, like, if flipping heck, if that would make a lot of people erupt. But it's, come on, when Miz was holding it, coming out, cutting them promos with his fit wife and his awesome suits, being an absolute douchebag. Great TV, and I miss it. I kind of wish they'd put the United States title on Miz, just so we can see him do that again.
I mean, the Miz is doing some great stuff at the moment with an imaginary John Cena, so you never know. He's in a good position. The Miz is never too far away from a decent feud.
Do you think Cornette's going to lose his rag at that because he's wrestling the Invisible Man? Because
the way it was done was everyone knew what was happening, and I thought it was actually very well done, even by the camera and stuff. So
it was obviously he was just being a douche.
He was baiting,
exactly. It wasn't legit wrestling. Like Miz was obviously playing mind games and being a bit of a prick. So yeah, I don't. It doesn't count as the stuff GCW do, does it? Because it was gimmick. It was complete gimmick and not trying to be taken seriously, which is what Miz is good at.
Character, but it'd be interesting to see if Cena picks up on that. Although actually he won't be on SmackDown because he's in India, isn't he? So I don't know how they're doing it tonight. I presume the majority of the people who have gone across is the Raw superstars, and SmackDown will just be a normal SmackDown, because I don't think they've recorded a second one, did they?
I'm not entirely sure, mate. I've been buried in a world of video games this week. But yeah, I never thought of that because I'm doing the SmackDown stream tonight. So yeah, I hope WWE don't leave me hanging and give me a
pre-recorded.
Or I don't mind pre-recorded. I prefer pre-recorded to 2 hours of R-Truth. That's for damn sure.
I'm pretty sure it would be the Raw superstars that have gone across, with maybe a couple of from SmackDown, because I know Cena's mentioned ages ago he would be in India. So and even then, I think that's probably finished already. I'm not saying they'll be back in time or anything like that, but that's finished. So I'd imagine, I hadn't heard anything about being pre-recorded. But anyway, join Sam 1 a.m. Or just before 1 a.m. and he'll be watching SmackDown tonight with Gimme a Hell Yeah. So go check out the Gimme a Hell Yeah channel. Big friend of the show. We often have Sam. We often have Ant or Dom or Dan. And it looks like Sam's got something he wants to say.
Well, yeah. Speaking on Gimme a Hell Yeah, we're actually going live in half an hour. It won't be me. I'm going to go and have a coffee and sit back and laugh at them. But we're going to have Ant versus Dom, speaking about CM Punk going to WWE or not, and it's going to get heated, and I can't wait. Guys, seriously, go over to Gimme a Hell Yeah, get yourself some popcorn, get yourself a drink, put your feet up. We're going to see antagonistic Ant and Diva Dom go at each other. They're both 2 apiece at the moment, so we'll see who wins this one. But this is going to be more exciting than any WrestleMania World Title match main event. This is going to be a slaughter, and I can't wait. There's a whole reason Dan and I don't get involved in these streams, because it's way more fun not to. But it is also more fun to do is just poke them from the sidelines in the comments and steer them the way you want them to go. So if you want to have some fun, do that in half an hour, because I'm going to be in the comments with my popcorn. Trust me on that. But then join me at 1 a.m. for SmackDown, and we'll see if it's pre-recorded or not. So
plenty of content over on Gimme Hell Yeah, and I'm sure there's plenty of content over on WrestleSphere as well. So go check out WrestleSphere. From me, there's a review of some of the talking points that I picked out from Payback. So go check that out on rushonrock.com. It's been a little while since I've put anything out written, so it was nice to get back into it. And then in other news, my running channel released this week. So if you're a fan of Wrestling Royalty and you're a fan of me, go check out something a little bit different, because I released the first few videos for Roller Coaster of Running. So if you just search for Roller Coaster of Running, you'll find my channel. That one's about, funny enough, me running, my fitness journey. You can join me on it from the very start. I've got some runs. I've already done one today. It was the Great North 5K around Newcastle and Gateshead. On Sunday, I'll be going round from Newcastle South Shields and the Great North Run. And even tomorrow, I'm squeezing in a run with my 6-year-old little girl. We're going to do the junior or the mini. I can't remember which one. I think it's the mini Great North Run, which is about 1.5 kilometres. But bless her, she's very excited. She's gone to bed very excited for a run tomorrow to get a medal. You can catch all that content. They'll be doing sort of vlogs and stuff for that. But thank you for joining us tonight on Wrestling Royalty. It's always a pleasure, never a chore. It's fantastic to have you on a Friday evening. And if you're watching this in the future, again, thank you very much. I've been Andy. He's been Sam. This has been Wrestling Royalty.